Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we'll be taking a deep dive into protists.
Oh, protists.
Yeah. Imagine, looking through a microscope
Yeah.
and a drop of pond water.
Oh, yeah.
Teeming with these single-celled eukaryotes, they're a diverse bunch
They are.
that don't quite fit into the plant, animal, or fungi kingdoms.
That's right. Hello, everyone.
So they're kind of like the misfits of the microscopic world, huh?
That's one way to put it. They certainly make classifying them a real challenge. But that just makes them all the more intriguing.
Definitely. So we've got some articles and research papers here. One even mentions a protist called Trypanosoma brucei, which causes African sleeping sickness. It's a stark reminder that these tiny organisms can pack a punch, right?
Absolutely. While most protists are harmless and vital parts of ecosystems, some can indeed cause diseases. Think of it like any other group of organisms. There's always a range of adaptations, some beneficial
Right.
and some harmful.
That makes sense. So how do scientists even begin to categorize these microscopic wonders?
Well, they've grouped protists into three main categories based on how they obtain nutrition. Imagine a cafeteria
Right.
with three main sections. The animal-like protozoa,
Right.
the plant-like algae,
Yep.
and the fungus-like slime molds and water molds.
Okay, so like a protist cafeteria. Let's start with the protozoa, the animal-like ones. What makes them so animal-like?
Protozoa are heterotrophs, which means they can't produce their own food like plants. They need to consume or absorb it from their environment.
Oh, right.
So they're the hunters and gatherers of the microscopic world, constantly searching for their next meal.
That's cool. So they're like the predators of the microscopic world. What kind of prey are we talking about here?
Mostly bacteria and other smaller protists.
Oh, okay.
It's a constant microscopic battle for survival.
I'm already hooked. So how do these tiny predators get around? Our sources mention they come in all sorts of forms and sizes.
Exactly. They range from tiny blood parasites to larger shell-covered marine forms. And their movement methods are incredibly diverse. Scientists have actually grouped them into 4 phyla based on how they move. We have flagellates,
Okay.
sarcodines,
Oh.
ciliates,
Okay.
and sporozoans.
Got it.
Imagine these as different modes of transportation in a bustling microscopic city.
Okay, I'm trying to picture this microscopic city with tiny taxis and buses. Tell me more about these transportation methods. Let's start with the flagellates.
Flagellates use whip-like structures called flagella to propel themselves.
Okay.
Think of them like tiny outboard motors.
Okay.
Some are free-living, exploring their environment, while others are parasitic, hitching a ride on a host.
We came across a flagellate earlier, the trypanosoma that causes African sleeping sickness. It's fascinating and a bit scary how these tiny organisms can cause such serious diseases.
It really highlights the impact these microscopic organisms can have on larger organisms like us. But remember, most flagellates aren't harmful. Some even have fascinating symbiotic relationships. For example, there are flagellates that live inside termite guts, helping them break down tough plant material.
Wow, so it's a mutually beneficial relationship. The flagellates get a safe home and food, and the termites get help digesting their meals.
Oh.
Yeah, that's flagellates. What about sarcodines? How do they get around?
Sarcodines move by extending temporary feet called pseudopodia.
Okay.
It's like they're constantly changing shape, flowing along surfaces. They also use pseudopodia to engulf their prey. Imagine a blob reaching out and surrounding its food.
Wow.
It's quite a sight under a microscope.
That's wild. Do any specific sarcodines come to mind from the research?
One that stands out is foramifera, which are marine amoebas with intricate calcium carbonate shells. They're incredibly abundant, and when they die, their shells accumulate on the ocean floor, forming vast layers of sediment. They're like tiny architects contributing to the geological record.
Wow. Those tiny shells build up over millions of years. It's amazing how these microscopic creatures play a role in shaping our planet. Okay, on to the next transportation method. Ciliates.
Ciliates are covered in hair-like structures called cilia that beat rhythmically, propelling them through the water. Imagine a tiny rowboat
Okay.
with hundreds of oars moving swiftly through a drop of water.
Okay, I'm picturing it. That's so cool. Are there any famous ciliates mentioned in our sources?
The most well-known is paramecium. Despite being a single cell, it has specialized structures for movement, feeding, and even waste removal. It's like a bustling, microscopic city all packed into a single cell.
It's incredible how complex a single-celled organism can be. Okay, finally, we have the sporozoans. What sets them apart?
Sporozoans are unique because they're all parasites. They live inside a host organism and obtain nutrients from it. Unlike the other protozoa, they don't actively move around much in their adult stage. Instead, they have complex life cycles that often involve multiple hosts.
Ah, so they've traded in their microscopic transportation for a life of luxury inside a host. Are there any examples of sporozoans that stand out?
One infamous example is Plasmodium, the parasite that causes malaria. It has a complex life cycle involving both mosquitoes and humans, manipulating both to survive and spread.
That's both fascinating and a little bit scary. So we've covered the animal-like protists. There's still a whole world of plant-like protists waiting to be explored. What's next on our protist adventure?
Next, we'll delve into the world of algae. Get ready to be amazed by their photosynthetic prowess and their vital role in our planet's ecosystems.
I can't wait. Algae is something I've always wanted to learn more about. All right, we've explored the world of protozoa, those hunters and gatherers of the microscopic world. Now, let's turn our attention to the plant-like protists. The algae. What makes them so plant-like? Algae, like plants, are masters of photosynthesis. They capture sunlight and convert it into energy, releasing oxygen in the process. They may not have roots, stems, and leaves like true plants, but they come in a dazzling variety of forms, from single-celled organisms to giant kelp forests swaying in the ocean currents.
That's right. They're responsible for a huge chunk of the oxygen we breathe, right?
Exactly. They are essential for life on Earth as we know it. Now, to make sense of this diversity, our sources talk about 6 different phyla of algae.
6 phyla. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I'm ready for the challenge, though. Where should we begin?
A great starting point is with the green algae, also known as chlorophytes. They're considered the most plant-like because they share many similarities with land plants. They have the same types of chlorophyll, their cell walls are made of cellulose, and they store food as starch, just like plants do.
So are they the ancestors of land plants?
That's a great question. Scientists believe that green algae and land plants share a common ancestor. In a way, you could say they're like distant cousins.
That makes sense. Do we have any examples of these green algae in our sources? I'm picturing something bright green and maybe a bit slimy.
You're not far off. One example is Chlamydomonas, a unicellular green alga that's like a tiny swimming eye. It has a light-sensitive eye spot and 2 flagella that help it move towards the best light for photosynthesis.
It's like a microscopic solar panel on the move. What other green algae should we know about?
There's Volvox, which forms spherical colonies made up of hundreds or even thousands of individual cells, each with its own flagella. Imagine a tiny green pulsating sphere rolling through the water. It's quite a sight.
Wow, it's like a miniature self-propelled ecosystem. Okay, we've covered the green algae. What's next on our algal adventure?
Let's journey to the colder, deeper waters of the ocean, where we'll find the brown algae, or phaeophytes. These are the giants of the algal world, forming those magnificent kelp forests that provide shelter and food for a vast array of marine life.
Kelp forests are truly magical. I remember reading that kelp is the only multicellular protist with differentiated tissues, including transport tissues similar to those found in plants. It's like they've evolved to mimic the complexity of land plants.
Exactly. And to survive in their challenging environment, they've developed some incredible adaptations. Their large, flat fronds are incredibly strong and flexible, able to withstand the force of ocean currents and waves, and their root-like holdfasts anchor them firmly to the rocky seabed.
So brown algae thrives in cold water. Does that mean red algae prefers warmer waters?
You got it. Red algae, or rhodophytes, are mostly found in warmer, shallower waters. They're smaller and more delicate than brown algae, often displaying intricate feathery forms. They get their red color from pigments that allow them to absorb light at greater depths where other algae can't survive.
It's like they've found their own niche in the underwater world.
Exactly. And some types of red algae, called coralline algae, play a crucial role in building coral reefs. They deposit calcium carbonate in their cell walls, contributing to the reef's structure and providing a habitat for countless marine organisms.
So they're like the bricklayers of the coral reef ecosystem. That's incredible. All right, we've explored the green, brown, and red algae. What other colorful characters are in the algal lineup?
Next up are the diatoms, or chrysophytes. They're unicellular algae that are incredibly abundant in both marine and freshwater environments. They're also a major component of plankton, the foundation of many aquatic food webs.
So tiny but mighty. What makes diatoms so unique?
They're intricate silica shells. These shells, called frustules, are like tiny glass boxes with lids, often displaying incredibly ornate patterns.
I've seen pictures of them. They're like microscopic works of art. But what's really fascinating is their unique mode of reproduction. They keep getting smaller with each generation, right?
Yes, it's called a reduction-division process. When diatoms divide asexually, Each new cell gets half of the original shell and grows a new half to fit inside. So over generations, they get progressively smaller.
But that can't go on forever, can
But
it?
you're absolutely right. Eventually, they reach a critical size, and that triggers sexual reproduction. The diatoms produce gametes which fuse to form a zygote. This zygote then grows back to the original size, restoring the full size of the diatom, and a new silica shell is formed.
So it's like hitting the reset button. That's a clever strategy to maintain the population. Okay, what's next on our algal tour?
Let's meet the dinoflagellates, or pyrophytes. They're unicellular algae with two flagellas that cause them to spin as they move through the water. Their name actually comes from the Greek word dinos, which means whirling.
That's a fitting name. I'm imagining a microscopic dance floor filled with spinning dinoflagellates. But I've also heard they can be troublemakers, right?
You're right. Dinoflagellates are important members of marine food webs, but some species can cause harmful algal blooms, also known as red tides. These blooms can release toxins that harm marine life and even humans who consume contaminated seafood.
So they're a reminder that even the smallest organisms can have a big impact on their environment. We've covered a lot of ground in the algal world. Is there one last stop on our journey?
Yes, let's meet the euglenoids, or euglonophytes. They're a fascinating group of single-celled freshwater algae with a unique twist.
Ooh, I love a good twist. What's so special about them?
Euglenoids can be both autotrophic and heterotrophic.
Wait, so they can make their own food like plants, but they can also eat other organisms like animals. That's incredible.
Exactly. If there's enough sunlight, they'll use their chloroplasts to photosynthesize. But if light is scarce, they can lose their chloroplasts and switch to absorbing nutrients from their environment or even engulfing smaller organisms. They're incredibly adaptable.
They sound like the ultimate survivors. So we've explored the incredible diversity of plant-like protists, from giant kelp forests to single-celled algae that can switch between plant and animal-like behavior.
Right.
It's amazing how evolution has shaped such a wide array of forms and strategies for survival.
It really is. But our exploration of the Protist Kingdom isn't over yet. We still have to delve into the fascinating world of the fungus-like protists, the slime molds and water molds. Get ready for some seriously strange and slimy organisms.
Slime molds. I'm both intrigued and slightly terrified, but that's what makes this deep dive so much fun. Let's get slimy. Okay, we're back and ready to dive into the slime. You know, we've explored the hunters and gatherers of the protist world and those amazing algae.
Right.
And now we're going into the world of fungus-like protists,
Yeah.
the slime molds and water molds.
God.
I'm ready for some strangeness.
Get ready to be amazed. These protists really blur the lines between kingdoms. They showcase characteristics of fungi, protozoa, and even plants. They're a real testament to just how creative evolution can be.
So they're like the rebels of the protist world, like breaking all the rules.
I can say that.
Our sources mention three main groups of these fungus-like protists. Let's start with the water molds.
Okay.
What makes them so fungus-like?
Water molds, or umicopes, are filamentous, which means they form these long thread-like structures. They resemble the hyphae of fungi spreading out like a network. Many water molds are saprotrophs,
Okay.
feeding on dead organic matter. They're like the recyclers of the microscopic world, breaking down the dead stuff and releasing nutrients back into the ecosystem.
So they're like the composters of the protist world. But I have a feeling there's got to be more to the story.
Not all water molds are such helpful decomposers, right?
You're right. While many are beneficial, some water molds are parasites, and they can cause serious problems. One infamous example is Phytophthora infestans,
Yeah.
the water mold responsible for the devastating Irish potato famines in the 1840s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I remember learning about that in history class. It's incredible how a microscopic organism can have such a massive impact on human history.
It really shows just how interconnected life on Earth is, from the smallest protist to entire human societies.
For sure, for sure. Okay, on to the slime molds. Now, I'm picturing something gooey and maybe a little bit creepy. Am I on the right track?
You're getting warmer. Plasmodial slime molds, or myxomycotes, are like giant amoebas, visible to the naked eye, as creeping slime-like masses. They're essentially single cells with multiple nuclei, and they can flow over decaying logs and leaves, engulfing bacteria and other microorganisms as they go.
So they're like the blob monsters of the forest floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's both fascinating and a little bit unsettling. How do these giant cells reproduce?
They have a remarkable life cycle. When conditions are right, they develop these structures called sporangia,
Okay.
which produce spores. Think of them like tiny time capsules. These stores can survive harsh conditions and disperse to new locations. When things get favorable again, the spores germinate, releasing cells that fuse to form a new plasmodium. And the cycle continues.
So they're like microscopic phoenixes rising from the ashes.
Exactly.
That's amazing. What about the other kind of slime mold? The cellular slime molds, how are they different?
Cellular slime molds, or acrasiomycotes, spend most of their lives as individual amoeboid cells. They're like tiny, independent scavengers roaming around and feeding on bacteria.
So they're more like the solo acts
Yeah,
compared to the giant plasmodial slime mold.
exactly. But when food becomes scarce, they do something incredible. They release a chemical signal that attracts other cells, causing them to aggregate or come together into a multicellular slug-like form called a pseudoplasmodium.
It's like they're forming a microscopic superorganism.
Exactly. This pseudoplasmodium then migrates to a more favorable location, forms a fruiting body, and releases spores, just like the plasmodial slime molds.
Oh, wow.
It's a fascinating example of cooperation in the microbial world.
That is truly mind-blowing. So we've gone from the hunters to the plant-like algae to the fungus-like protists. What a wild ride through the kingdom Protista. It really has been.
It's a testament to the incredible diversity of life on Earth, even at the microscopic level. Protists play crucial roles in ecosystems around the world.
Right.
They are the foundation of food webs, they recycle nutrients, and they even help to regulate our climate.
That is incredible. I'm definitely looking at the world differently now, knowing all these amazing creatures are out there.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, I have a newfound appreciation for the Protists.
I'm glad.
Well, a huge thank you to you for guiding us through this incredible deep dive into the world of Protists. I've learned so much.
It was my pleasure. And to our listeners, I leave you with this thought. As we continue to learn more about Protists, it really begs the question, what other amazing secrets are these tiny organisms holding, just waiting to be discovered?
That is a great question to ponder. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the fascinating world of Protists. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.